My name is Kelly Cutrone, and I am the CEO of a public relations, marketing, branding, and fashion show production company called People's Revolution. We have offices in New York, LA, and Paris. You know, she has a really bad, in my opinion, Eleanor Roosevelt was really a victim of her times in the sense that she's one of the most phenomenal women. I usually cry when I talk about Eleanor Roosevelt, so I'm just going to tell you, I apologize in advance, but she's one of the most amazing women that ever lived. And it wasn't at a time when women were really getting a lot of props for doing anything. As a matter of fact, the women's movement was not in effect at that time. Birth control hadn't been invented yet. And birth control is really the touch point which changed the feminist movement because women just simply were not getting pregnant at 18. And by not getting pregnant at 18, it allowed them to enter the workplace, and it allowed them sexual freedom, and they started having more choices of what to do with their body and their lives than they'd ever had before. But mostly before that, we were still living in a time where things like, you know, I mean, marriage is still sacred to some people, so I'll just say that things were much more strict and let's just say old-fashioned. But her thing is that, you know, she grew up in not a very nice situation. I mean, she grew up with wealthy parents, but neither of them could be there for her. One was very abusive and called her ugly all the time, her mother, and her father, who was a chronic alcoholic.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. So you guys know all that. Switch to, she ends up marrying her cousin. You know that? Did you hear that yet?
Yeah.
So they're cousins, which I don't recommend for any of you. I hope when you leave here that you do not marry your cousins. It's not a good idea from a hereditary standpoint. But she did. But they were far enough removed. And she had 6 children and 1 died, right? 6 and 1. So they had 5 children together. And in my opinion, in India, there's a thing called Shiva Shakti. And in India, there's the way that the male and the female sit together and they have to be equal. And we don't have this in other religious teachings that exist. It's usually the male in forward and the female over here. And so my theory about that is that they were actually very equal. And he was politically very ambitious and she was socially very conscious. And it's my belief, I think of her as like a Guadalupe or a Mother Teresa or really a sage, or I mean, I would take it one step further and say that I really believe that she was an incarnation of the Divine Mother in the sense that, you know, what does that mean? You know, compassion. Oh, the foundation doesn't say this, by the way. This is my own rhetoric. She was ruthless. She was fearless. You know, ruthlessness and fearlessness are part of the feminine. She was compassionate. She was loving. She was maternal in the sense of what she did for the world. And so she, in my opinion, really was one of the most profound people that we've had on this planet in the last 100 or 200 years. And for me, the most important thing that she did, besides being, you know, someone who actually helped put an end to lynching, like she called Franklin up on the phone and she was like, Franklin, it's unacceptable that you're allowing lynching. And he'd say, well, why? And she'd say, because it's not nice. Make this stop. And meanwhile, they weren't even living together. You know that, right? You know that she was living at Valkill and spent very little time at the White House as the First Lady and was off doing whatever she wanted. And he was dating her best friend. So I think she was a very modern girl to be able to swing this whole thing, like the kids and the dating and the separate house and changing the world. That's say good for her. So she co-authored the Declaration of Human Rights. And in my opinion, you know, I came to Valkill on an invitation, which I wrote a chapter in my book that we printed out for you. I don't recommend that you read my book till you're over 18, but that chapter is there, and it's a good, nice, clean chapter about Eleanor Roosevelt and the Universal Mother. But I came here on an invitation from the center, and when I watched the movie, did they see the movie yet? Mm-hmm. So when I saw that movie, I just started crying. I just thought, this woman, the Valkill tour film, it was unbelievable to me, and I just thought, why is everyone fighting over God if we can't believe in human rights? If we, as in a nation and in a world, if we don't agree about human rights, like, what are we doing talking about God? It's kind of like going from kindergarten to college. It's just like, does everybody have a right to be here? Can we just agree with that? Like, why do I need a passport if I want to go to Libya or Argentina? Or, you know, if I'm a citizen of the world, why wouldn't we all have a right to come and go as we please? You know, and how did this happen? And, you know, we need to get people up and into the concept of human rights. You know, and you guys are going to have to really, it's not enough to be on the internet. It's like, I have 120,000 followers on Twitter. That's great. But you know what? It's not the same as like when I go to Washington and I ask for an appointment with my congressman or my senator or on a local level. It's like you guys really need to watch yourselves and get up away from the computers once in a while and become activists and demand that this is going to happen in your community, because if we do not keep love and compassion in our hearts and transform our communities, the world, God bless you. And, or somebody said to me today, be blessed. You know, if we don't do that, the thing's it's chipped, you can see it, right? You can see it. So, you know, Eleanor, for me, I really think is one of the most amazing women that's, be blessed, on the planet, you know, and I hope, I mean, I think it's such a privilege for you guys to be here, to be invited to such a beautiful place and such a beautiful town with such smart older women who are around you and just pouring every second and every minute of your time here and just feeding you and filling you up with all these different opportunities for you to look at and receive.